I plead with you, my friends across the aisle that look like me. Now it's time for you to go in those back rooms and straighten this out now. Not tomorrow, now. These are your people? You push them. Blacks for Trump? Come on now. I'm calling on you. It's time to be accountable now for your decision to put us in this predicament.
Hey, family. Welcome to the Black Man's Roundtable podcast and another episode of our co-host special series. We have another jam-packed, unapologetically black episode. So let me jump right into it and welcome my other two co-hosts, Mr. Bobby X. Fryer and Mr. Rodney J. Littles. How's it going, gentlemen?
Great.
Yo,
Another
awesome,
blessed
man.
evening.
Amen. We're in the land of the living, bro. We're doing great.
Amen.
Absolutely. Look, guys, like I said, we have a jam-packed show. So, and you know these co-host specials, we get down, we get busy. So I'm not going to waste any time. Bobby, you are on deck, and I know on this episode you'll be talking about reparations. Go ahead on and get it started, brother. It's on you.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to start this topic off on reparations because, you know, we have so many issues going on in the country right now, and this topic is often brought up amongst our people around this time or around election time about reparations. And one of the things that I've always said is when people say we want reparations, I always say define it. What is reparations to you? What does it mean? Because reparations can be in many forms. The most difficult part of all of this will always be the point of money. Okay. But before we get to that, my first thing I like to bring to everyone's attention is about ourselves. Because whenever we get into this discussion about reparations and we determine, first of all, who's going to get it. Okay. So how will we determine who gets what is one thing. And one thing we can't do to even have a pertinent discussion about reparations, one thing we can't do is to continue to disrespect ourselves. And what I mean by that is the lack of self-love. It still bothers me to this day how Kamala Harris was disrespected during her attempted run at the presidency by our own people.
Come on.
If we can't love ourselves enough to understand that if a black man has a seed and for another black man to question the race of that seed, in the Bible it says you are your father's child. Right? You are what your father is. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that it doesn't apply to a black woman. It absolutely does. Mm-hmm. But even if you just go with that theory, there should have been no question from anyone about what Kamala Harris's race was. Mm-hmm. We've gone through this already with President Obama. Mm-hmm. So why would it come up again when Kamala Harris is running? Listen, you know her background. We all know her background. She's coming from California all the way across the other side of the country to go to Howard University. Mm-hmm. That told me right then and there she identifies with who she is. She's already said it. We understand her mother raised her. I listened to her story about her mother being an activist during that time. I believe her. But to come all the way from one side of the country to another side of the country to go to college and then to join a historically black sorority, this shouldn't even have been an issue. I'm bringing all this up because we have to understand that if you're talking about whether it's a local official, state official, or on the federal, national level, if we don't take it serious about who gets what and how it's divvied up, why do you expect someone that's in a majority to take it seriously about even putting it on the table? Because you have to pay attention to, again, when we get into politics, you have to pay attention to what are the numbers for the government that you're asking to do this. When I say what are the numbers, look at the percentages of who's in office, who's represented in Congress, who's represented on your state level, your local level, to even have a discussion about this at all. And what I saw is a lot of people don't understand that you first must have a study when you're talking about reparations. So here in Georgia, we had a group on the state level that was conducting a survey, a study, so to speak, on reparations. But no matter how many studies you do, whether it's local, state, or national, again, you got to have the votes. And then how do we determine what is the value that Black people have already created for this country? I don't see how you can measure that, because the number, I think, is so infinitely large. There's no way you can get it coming from the federal budget or from the federal government. I think we're in the quadrillions. I think that number is so large. And again, let me make this clear about my own position about it. Would I love to see reparations happen for us? Of course I would. I'm not against it. But I tell you what, if you're just going to wait on a check, that's where it gets fuzzy for me, because you can do several things. Pay off my mortgage, send my children to school for free, give me a 0% no interest loan to start a business. There are several things that you can do that don't require you to send me money in terms of reparations. Now, I'm going to turn this back around here for a second. In terms of reparations, how many of y'all are familiar with Ashley Babbitt? Do you know who Ashley Babbitt is? Okay, so Ashley Babbitt was the woman that on January 6th, during the raid, during the invasion of the Capitol, she was one that tried to jump over the barricade, and she was shot. By the way, she was warned not to come over there,
Right.
but she attempted it, and she got shot and succumbed to being shot. So my question is, in that instance, this administration approved her, approved is the wrong word. They awarded her family $5 million. $5 million. Yet the people of Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the Tulsa Race Massacre, they haven't been awarded anything from reparations. And I know there were 3 survivors. I think they're down to 1 now. Yeah, they're down to 1 now. When I say we're down to 1, we're talking about someone that's over 100 years old that was a witness to what happened in Oklahoma. And I the first time I visited Oklahoma, which was just a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I intentionally wanted to go see Greenwood for myself. I intentionally went to Tulsa to see what happened there. And the shame of it all is not only, the lack of it being taught in our history books, which is a whole other topic and conversation altogether.
Really?
But to see what was done there. And if they can't get reparations, a thriving Black community, Black Wall Street, as it was called, if they can't get reparations, how big is this mountain to climb? That should have been the easiest one of all. But we've got to get back to loving ourselves, because I guarantee you, I see the fight. The fight will be over, well, why you get it and I don't? Why you got that much and I didn't get any? Yep. That's what we do when we tear down ourselves. So I'm going to end this with this. What bothers me about this is I go back to a speech that Malcolm X gave, where he asked, who taught you to hate yourself? Mm-hmm. Who taught you not to love your hair, your appearance? Mm-hmm. We see so much, people altering how they look right now. But as a Black person, I don't care if you're the lightest to the darkest. I love you. But I lose my patience with those that don't love themselves enough. And Dr. King talked about it. He said there will be opportunists that just don't follow. Harriet Tubman knew it. That's why she carried a gun. She knew it. So there are those amongst us that we got to understand that we just have to let go. They're not going to join the boat with us. And when I say the boat, I'm not talking about a boat ride from slavery. I'm just talking about they're not on the same page with the rest of us who understand what's out there and the hill that has to be climbed. So this is something that irks me, that is only brought up, if you notice, it's only brought up when a Democrat is in office. It's the only time it's brought up from our side. How can you expect someone to take us seriously about this being important to us when the only time you bring it up is when a Democrat is in office? But yet these same people will say that both sides are they just the same. Well, why are you only waiting until when one party is in office to bring it up? You should be bringing it up right now if Amen. It's that serious. It doesn't matter Amen. Which party is in office. That's right. You should bring the same issue with the same energy to the floor right now if you're serious about it. And that's the only way anybody's going to take this serious or you see any movement from it. So,
yep. It's
your
time.
thoughts?
It's time. What do you say, Rodney?
You hit all the points where it needs to be when it comes down to reparations. But I think one thing that I want to take out from that, Bobby, is something that I think that we're going to hurt and ruin our own chances, bro. If we ever were to get it. And that's when you talked about all of this, who's black and who's not black. We talk about on this platform a lot. Both you guys know this. We talk about the fact that race is a made-up construct. Okay?
Yeah.
It is simply made up. I think Donald Trump said this week something about race being biological. That is straight out of the KKK, playbook. Race is not biological.
Nah.
Okay? And, they even thought at one point that if black people, procreate with white people, that if they had a child, it would come out like a mule. Like a mule can't reproduce. And so that's where the term, mulatto comes from. Mulatto. Yep. So people run around talking about, mulatto. Even we had the rapper or whatever. Now she changed it and dropped it and just changed it to Lotto or whatever. But she realized that, no, there's nothing cute about that. There's nothing cute about the whole mulatto thing. But the origin of it came from that, from mule, from you're a mule. Okay. Yeah. But they realized, okay, that wasn't true. Of course, we know that people who are race, I'm using what they made up construct, two people that, have a child, a black person and a white person, of course the child can reproduce. So they were wrong with that. So we know that race is a made up construct. Now, here's the deal. Bobby, I'm already seeing where the moment reparations talk started to get serious in our community. I think there was a community in Ohio or somewhere where they actually got reparations. It was a local, very local level. Yeah. Then you start hearing all this stuff about, ADOS, right? American Descendants of Slavery. All these breakdowns, FBA, Foundational Black American or whatever, right? And it's like you're doing that because, like you said, Bobby, they are already ready to start saying you're not black enough to get this money. You're not a descendant of slavery. You're not a foundational black person, whatever that means. Do you know how many people we would have to get rid of to include Marcus Garvey and so many, Shirley Chisholm? You know how many people we would have to get rid of if we start talking about foundational black folks and all this other kind of stuff and ADOS and everything? Look, if you're going to do that stuff, then do it. If you're going to break us down in different groups, we don't have enough numbers to do that, number one, okay? But here's what I want to say, Rodney, before I turn it over to you. And one other thing you said, Bobby, that made me think about it, which is reparations, they are literally paying white people reparations. That's what that lady got paid that you're talking about. $5 million. That's reparations. It's to repair. The only people out of slavery that got paid reparations, which is to repair, okay, were the white slave owners. This is what they're trying to do now. This is the signal that they're sending. You go out there and you do something to black folks or you do something to that community, we will pay you. But not only is the government doing it, white citizens are doing it, because all you have to do is do something very terrible to a black person, a black child, call them the N-word, like we might have saw that with a woman call the little boy the N-word, and white people, just regular white people, started sending her hundreds of thousands of dollars on her social media. And so we know that that's another trend that's happening. So you can't just say that it's government officials. It's also you. It's also you that live next door to me that borrowed some sugar or something. It's also you just as well as it is them. And so that's just what, and last thing I want to say, Rodney, guess what?
What, bro?
We are all, there's no race.
Right.
We are all shades of brown. It's just that white people, here's what I'm going to tell you right now. You just have a little bit, well, that's kind of a lot less melanin than what the three of us have. But guess what? You just as black as we are. You just don't have as much. Everybody, we know there's proven science. So cut it out, especially us. Cut it out.
Thank you.
It's basically a way to control, period. Divide and conquer. If you're worried about me thinking I'm taking something from you because of your color, then there'll never be a chance for unity. So here's the scenario. There has to be truth, reconciliation, and repair. Okay, so the truth comes out. What period of history are we talking about? The truth. You have those that came out of slavery. Then you have those that may have migrated here that never experienced slavery, but because of Brother Butler's comment about this construct called race, you come from Jamaica, bro, you black. Get in line with the rest of them Negroes that came out of the field. Oh, you didn't come out of that field? You came out of the Jamaican field? Well, get in line. So we have to identify the truth about when, what happened. Because after slavery, there was still oppression. The question was, who that they describe as black was oppressed during what period of time? How were they oppressed? And what's the damage for repair? So you got to get the truth first. Then the reconciliation comes in, like I said, who and what was the damage? And once you identify the damage, then you talk about repair, and it'll be different based upon who we're talking about. Okay? So, as my brother Butler was saying, Brother Fryer, that's the deal. They have to figure out who, what, when, and where we're talking about for the repair. So, it's going to take some time to determine all of that. That's why you say, we need to study. But it's going to be different periods of history, not just during the Civil War, post-Civil War Reconstruction. We have been oppressed in this country because of the race construct and brown skin throughout the history of this country, including today. So and this whole concept about these groups dividing us on how and what, again, that's the ploy of the man. Come on,
exactly.
man.
Exactly.
And Rodney, before you finish, I want to make sure that people understand that
yes, sir.
I don't have a problem with the groups, okay? I just don't think that we should be doing this stuff on social media, bringing that. I think that it should be, like you saying, a think tank, okay?
Yes.
Something serious. And
Yes.
we figure out, look, if you look like the three of us in this country, you have been affected by racism, period.
Yes.
And also, they are the ones that calling it America, right? Is the only, every place else. How do you get away with calling the United States of America just America? When you got America, you want to call it America, and guess what? Chattel slavery was all over the Americas, but this country is so egocentric, if you will, sometimes that you want to actually just call yourself America. But for that reason, guess what? You owe a lot of money to a lot of folks in South America, Central America, and North America.
But
Go ahead, Rodney. I'm sorry for that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bobby.
No, I just want to say one thing. We have to learn and understand, too, that our African ancestry, which is why the Caribbean is as black as it is.
Hello.
And we have to understand, too, amongst ourselves, that everybody that came from Africa that were slaves didn't all reach the United States.
That's correct.
Okay? You got the Caribbean, you got Brazil, you got South America, other parts of South America where that happened.
Like they say, Bobby, it's where you got dropped off at. But go ahead.
Exactly. Where you got dropped off at. And we need to understand too, like when they do these studies, if they say, whether you are a descendant of a descendant of a slave or not, you have to understand, you have to be able to trace back who your family is. I don't know all my family past my great grandmother. I don't know everyone. So it's like, you're having to piece together a family tree that only goes back so far because we were interrupted, we were separated. There's only so much you're going to be able to do other than track your DNA to some things, which I've done already, to your African ancestry DNA, which part of Africa your ancestry came from. But it depends on which parent that you're using it for as well. So they can determine whether it's from your mother or from your father, but we've got all of this in us to begin with. So when we get into dividing us up, and I understand what you're saying, Rodney, and I'll pass on to Rodney Littles, But we get to divide up amongst ourselves, as Rodney Little said. That is just another way of dividing us up and keeping us separated and not keeping us together. But we don't understand, like, the unity is what they're afraid of.
Bingo.
That's exactly what they're afraid of. So we keep falling for this same nonsense over and over and over again. And so when I see it, I'm just like,
Right.
no, stop it, cut it out.
feel you.
I cannot be a part of it. So I'm
feel
sorry.
you. No, bro, you're on the money, man. I feel you. Well, that's a great segue, man, into what I wanted to chop up for a few minutes here. The black business impact on the U.S. economy. I'm
Yes, sir.
gonna give you some highlights on that, some historic data, and gonna take a look at the local Atlanta Metro Black Business Outlook. Most recent outlook and numbers on what's happening with black business in the Atlanta metro area. And then I'm going to segue into who cashed in on affirmative action and later DEI. All this has an impact on what Bobby was talking about and what we're talking about in terms of the economics. And then lastly, I'm going to try to play with the price for reparations in 2025 and see where we go with that. All right. Now, you know me, bro. I have to have my sources. I don't be just spitting stuff without some receipts. So
What you do?
I'm going to start off with building an economy that embraces and empowers black entrepreneurship. It was by the Democratic Joint Economic Committee, headed by Don Beyer, Beyer. Black entrepreneurs and businesses form an integral part of the U.S. economy, as we know, contributing to its growth and its dynamicism. This brief highlights the key contributions of these businesses and the challenges they face in today's economy. Fact: more than 3 million black-owned businesses contribute over $200 billion a year to the U.S. economy annually and employ approximately 1.2 million people, Americans. Between 2012 and 2017, the number of black-owned businesses grew at a faster pace than the number of white-owned businesses. Now, again, these are new businesses growth. Mm-hmm. Black businesses are more likely to be owned by women. Interesting fact. And they have historically provided a pathway to wealth creation. Women again. God bless them. Long-standing barriers to financing continue to limit black business formation and development, access to capital. We know how the banks deal with us. They also leave black-owned businesses more vulnerable to economic shocks, downturns, recessions, etc. This is why black businesses were disproportionately affected by the pandemic, COVID, and many struggled couldn't access the emergency relief that was supposed to be for small businesses. We did not get access to that capital. It's like the veterans that came back from war and didn't get the VA and the FHA mortgages. Same thing here. Black farmers, they're supposed to be getting aid from the Department of Agriculture. Over the centuries, they didn't get their fair share. I did that. The Biden administration and Congress have worked to strengthen the Minority Business Development Agency under his administration, which provided access to capital, technical assistance, and development training for black-owned businesses of all sizes. But we need more to address the structural barriers that exist within the system, the U.S. economic system. Let's talk about the impact. Black-owned businesses play a critical role in the U.S. economy. In 2019, there were over 134,000 employer firms owned by black Americans nationwide. These businesses, nearly a third of which are in the healthcare and social assistance sector, make important contributions caring for those who are sick, providing child care, and more. Interesting sector. Black-owned businesses employ 1.27 million Americans, or roughly 1% of all actively employed workers, and generate 134 billion annual sales and 40 billion in payroll. More than 1/3 of employer firms, those are firms that actually have employees, owned by black Americans, employ 5 or more workers. 1/3. That's a pretty good number, to be honest with you, to be able to create employment. So the bottom line is, if black business is doing well, we're creating employment for our community, with less stress on public services, and it's contributing to the overall U.S. economy. Although black Americans represent more than 13% of the population, Only about 10% of all businesses in the United States are owned by blacks. In contrast, non-Hispanic white Americans own a higher share of businesses than the share of the population that they represent. Black businesses are especially likely to be non-employer firms, as I talked about, unfortunately. Non-employer firms are generally small, such as real estate agents, independent contractors, etc. Getting into the meat of the matter, businesses that hold the greatest opportunity for growth and stable contributions to wealth are employer firms. Only 2% of employer firms are owned by black Americans. Only 2%. Relative to the 77% of employer firms owned by white Americans. 77%. Black employer firms also tend to be smaller, younger, and less profitable than employer firms owned by white Americans. Check out the disparity. Because of this, there are 800,000 fewer black-owned businesses than should be otherwise. 800,000 because of this dynamic of racism and white supremacy. But contrast that to the Black Belt, Metro Atlanta black-owned businesses. This is an article by Will Wright. It was done in February 2025. And I'm doing this in honor of Black History Month because we are the Mecca. Let's take a look at the Metro Atlanta black-owned employer businesses. According to new data from the census, the annual business survey, ABS, are thriving. For the third year in a row, the Lending Tree named Atlanta as the most, Lending Tree is a business loan platform, named Atlanta as the nation's leading metro for black-owned businesses. All of the top 10 metros from Lending Tree's report are in the Sun Belt, with Fayetteville, North Carolina, Virginia Beach, Memphis, and Washington, D.C. rounding out the top 5. After Atlanta. Alongside Atlanta, the Augusta metro area is the only other region from the state of Georgia in the top 10 nationally. So Georgia's doing pretty good as it relates to the history of black-owned businesses and contributing to the state's economy. Okay. We note that the ABS findings from the most recent data release are from the calendar year 2022. So this is recent information. Let me give you a few highlights. Black-owned employer businesses totaled 13,766 firms, up from 10,689 from the prior year, year over year. That's incredible. This represents nearly a 30% increase year over year. The percent of all employer businesses in the metro that are black-owned was 11.3%. Again, that's higher than the national average. This percentage is climbing. Last year, the percent of all employer businesses that were black-owned was 8.8%. That's a 3%, just about a 3% increase. The average payroll of black-owned employer businesses was $36,574, up from $33,446 the prior year. All this is good news for us. Hope we can keep it going. Alongside progress was made when measured year over year in 2022. The average payroll at a black employer business was 57.1% of the average payroll across all employer businesses. And that was up from 2021, 50%. Healthcare and social assistance, as I said earlier, it was a major contributor, recorded $2.6 billion in sales in 2022, the top performing sector for all black-owned employer firms in the Atlanta metro area. I was impressed by that. Yeah. So we're doing it. But the question, who cashed in on DEI and affirmative action? I think you guys know.
We know. Yeah, we know.
Numerous studies show that white women have disproportionately benefited from DEI and affirmative action programs, receiving a larger share of economic and leadership opportunities than women of color. So we're going to keep this within the women category, okay? This trend also appears in government contracting, where white women-owned businesses have historically had greater access to opportunity than those of women of color. Affirmative action, DEI, and employment. I had to put this in because we were talking about the contribution that black businesses give to employment. Affirmative action, DEI policies were originally intended to help historically marginalized groups, but white women have frequently been the primary beneficiaries. Now, I'm going to go back to the beginning of this Office of Minority Business Enterprise federal program that started this whole thing, trying to get black businesses more business in government and private sector. Okay? It came about because of a Republican president who was running for re-election, Richard Nixon, and they employed the Southern strategy. But what they don't tell you in history is that there were black businessmen who were Republican that demanded that there be a contracting component for black businesses. And why did they do that? They didn't use the word reparations, Bobby and Rodney, but that's what it was. Without the terms and the and all of the publicity about it, say this is what we need because we need to begin to build our own wealth, generational wealth. And the only way we can do it is through black business development. And this is our form of reparations. They said that in the back room, but not to the press. Okay? How do I know? I know the guys that were there. A McKinsey & Company study, 2022 report, found that 63% of diversity and inclusion leadership roles were occupied by white women. That's in corporate America. C-suite representation. C-suite, that's the top. That's the top floor.
Right.
C-suite. That's what Rodney Butler be talking about when he says I see in them suites and streets, the C-suite.
Yeah.
White women hold 19% of C-suite positions, while women of color hold only 4%. So how can you make a big impact if you're not at the table? Proximity to power. Here's the kicker, as I saw Bobby laughing when I said this. A 2020 Catalyst report suggests that white women's closer social and family relationships with white men who hold most high-level executive positions have given them greater access to professional opportunities. So we started this all out about talking about reparations, and the whole idea of affirmative action and DEI was to begin to level the playing field. But it got hijacked. Women-owned business contracting. Okay, let's see what happened there. Statistics indicate disparities in both the number and revenue of white women-owned businesses compared to those of women of color. In 2022, white women-owned businesses reportedly received 3%, that's $18 billion of federal contract dollars. By contrast, businesses owned by black women received 2%, or $12 billion. Asian-owned businesses received 1.5%, or $9 billion. Native American-owned businesses received 0.5%, or $3 billion. The revenue gaps. Georgia study found that businesses owned by white women report an average of $198,000 a year in annual revenue, significantly higher than the average. Can you guess what it is, bro? Own business? $22,000. And Latino women they get even more than us, $56,000. Okay?
Wow.
Annual revenue. Okay? Affirmative action gains. Some analysts say white women have benefited from federally owned small business programs more than other groups, and some have reportedly exploited partnerships with minority-owned businesses to take advantage. And I'll bring it to a close, gentlemen. Trump-era anti-DEI. Trump's rollback of DEI initiatives leaves some black-owned business leaders unfazed. Biden's DE policies deliver some gains, but not enough to overcome structural barriers. One administration can't do it. It's institutionalized racism in the private sector through government. The good old boy network and other barriers shut minority-owned firms out of federal contracts, some firms say. They said the DEI policy was good, but it was just not enough. I got a case from a young lady named Casey Cooper. She was in the long-haul trucking industry, a male-dominated industry. And she knew that the odds were stacked against her. But when President Trump began targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across the federal government, which could include a program aimed specifically at helping black-owned firms like hers to compete, she stayed unfazed. Quote, DEI isn't for us, she said. It looks good on paper, but the money doesn't go with us anyway, which confirmed a few points I made earlier. So the evidence is there. We understand the deal. I could go through some other metrics, but that's the bottom line. The data points to why many still feel failed by the initiatives. Despite positive metrics, in some cases, progress was not seen as addressing the core structural issues needed to close the economic gap, access to capital, removing the barriers to contracts, getting the assistance you need in order to grow your business at scale. Those are the things that are needed in order for there to be economic justice. Integration has failed to deliver economic justice for black businesses and communities. DEI initiatives and affirmative action have fallen short, leaving us chained to systems that exclude and diminish us. So, gentlemen, in closing, what's the cost? What do we say the cost? How it's distributed is another issue, but how do we determine the cost? Well, Dr. King had indicated before he died, he was going to Washington to ask for $20 billion a year in reparations for 10 years.
Yep.
$20 billion a year. That was in the 60s. The check bounced.
Insufficient funds.
Insufficient funds. So with past due interests and the attack by white supremacist administration in Washington on our very citizenship, that number should be close to $100 billion a year for 20 years, or $2 trillion. And why do I say that? Because the RSF study says that the impact and the cost for slavery, the free labor, with interest earned, is closer to a value of $6 trillion to $14 trillion, to bear out Bobby's comments earlier. Multi-trillions. $2 trillion is cheap. That sounds like a deal to me. I know the man likes to make deals. Sounds like a deal for me. And get to Bobby's point, to bring it home and see how, and we didn't talk about this before the show, Rodney. Bobby brought his point of view, I brought my point. We didn't talk about this before the show, but he's absolutely right. We need to make the demand now, not wait till there's another administration. We have to make it every year, and it doesn't have to be National Black Business Month to make the point. Our leaders need to be on this, both our civic, civil rights leaders, our economic black business leaders, our elected officials. This is the time that we demand, because he's taking everything else away. Fine. We weren't getting our fair share anyway, and it was designed for us from the get-go. So let's cut the crap. Let's get down to doing business. And the business deal right now, in my mind, from the brothers and sisters I've spoken to about this, I was on Black Voters Matter webinar last week, and they asked me these questions. And I said, well, this is the number that I see. 100. Well, Rodney, where you going to get it from? Well, shit, they brought $300 billion in tariffs this 6 months. Take $100 billion out of there, and we're good to go. Let's make the down payment, $100 billion. All right? And then ask Bobby how it should be cut up, because he got a good idea. What do you say, Rod? What do you say, Bobby?
I was going to say, I'm going to let Bobby, Rodney, I got so much to say. If I'm going to cut into, I'll cut into my own time. Instead of Bobby cutting into, I'll cut into my own time. But I will say this, Bobby, before you get started, and that is, Donald Trump, estimates have shown that he's made $2 or $3 billion since he's been in his second term. So I just want to say that. Go ahead, Bobby.
So I want to highlight a couple of things, or just piggyback off a few things that Rodney said. The unemployment rate has risen over the last few months amongst black unemployment. Yes, and it's mostly affecting black women.
Correct.
And so when you look recently, he's tried to fire, he's announced he's fired. I don't know if he has the power to do it.
Right.
The Fed governor on the Federal Reserve, Lisa Cook. Again, the irony is you're looking to fire a black woman, and then you're accusing her of things that if you're going to accuse somebody of mortgage fraud has to be proven. You can't just make the accusation and say you're guilty. It has to be proven. Just like any other case, you get to be adjudicated as to what happened. But, he's just making up stuff as he goes along. And again, he's definitely trying to imitate a dictatorship if he's not already accomplished that goal. But he's definitely in that era, in that aura of being a dictator, to be an authoritarian. So that's one thing. The other thing, too, was you mentioned black contracts, and the first thing I thought about when you said that was I thought about Maynard Jackson.
Yes, sir.
The former mayor here in Atlanta. And he had created a minority business enterprise, which basically, as our first black mayor, he required a certain percentage of municipal contracts to go directly to minority-owned firms, and address discriminatory practices, where we receive so little contractual work from our local government. So that's the first thing I thought about, which was something when you mentioned those numbers. I thought about that's his biggest legacy as mayor of Atlanta, Maynard Jackson. That's one of the things that I just immediately thought about when you were announcing those numbers and those percentages. I remembered, I was like, that's one of the first things that he did. And I'm gonna go back to one other thing, and right now I'll let you share your thoughts. I'll go back to one other thing that Kamala Harris had put on the table, and this is another thing that it gets me every time.
What's that, bro?
When she offered the opportunity from starting a business from $5,000 to $50,000.
Yes.
I'm telling you, I already had other things lined up because I am a minority business owner. But there are other things I'm sitting here thinking to myself, from $5,000 to $50,000 to start a business, right?
Yes, sir.
We're not even including the child tax credit, the first time, well, I don't know if it was first time homeowners, but the down payment assistance program she had. All of that to me was allowing us an opportunity really to start over, to make a dent into the black wealth gap, the black homeownership gap, all of those things which could have started a business. If you get that kind of a start, to start a business in your community,
looking at something else,
man, from 5 to 50, and people weren't listening. Those of us that weren't listening, too bogged down in all that other nonsense. $50,000 to start a business. You don't hear any of that from this administration at all right now, because that was something they were never going to implement, or even attempt to implement, because it's something that we could have benefited from. That's right. But that is one of the things that I just never forgot from what she offered in terms of policy. And I know she sometimes just sit there and says, just shakes her head and says,
I know.
I told y'all. And it wasn't just her. It wasn't just her. Yeah, right. I told you so. That's so right. I just thought about that, Rodney, when you mentioned that.
Good point. Bob.
Those things.
And the sister that he's trying to get rid of at the Federal Reserve is a Georgia native.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
And you had said last week, 300,000 black women, 350,000 have been let go at the federal level.
Yep.
Unemployed. Not
it's intentional.
Level, just in general.
And they're finding it very hard. Yeah. These same highly qualified sisters are finding it very difficult to get rehired.
Yes, sir.
So it's by design. Okay, I guess it's my turn. So, I have a lot, but I'm not going to say it all. First of all, you and Bobby both hit on, words, what I call words and legislation. We know that Barack Obama was able to get some legislation passed because Barack Obama, who is a constitutional lawyer, understood that you can never get away with calling something black, right?
That's right.
Correct.
And black people, listen, stop, get over it. This is the way it is. You're not going to get any legislation passed when you're calling it the black anything.
Thank you.
It's just not going to happen. So
it's unconstitutional.
Exactly. It's
unconstitutional. You're going to kill it in the courts.
It's unconstitutional. The courts would throw it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, when Barack Obama was talking about the student loans and all of that, right? And so when he started talking about Pell Grants, right? Pell Grants is the buzzword for black, right?
Yep.
So let these people be smart. Let them use what they use. And I think, Bobby, what you talked about with Kamala Harris was talking about so much legislation so much policy rather, that would directly help our community. Kamala Harris, also a lawyer, no, she cannot use black.
That's right.
But all of those things she was saying, they would benefit directly the black community. Now, white people understand that perfectly.
That's right.
Because what I've learned, Rodney and Bobby, is this, is especially over these past, however long it's been, 2008 since Barack Obama, right? What I've learned is that generally, and it looked like we're starting to be that way too, what I've learned about white people is that if it's going to benefit those darkies, we don't want it. We'd rather not have it, right? I'm talking about that's coming from white people. It's like we rather, and of course, I'm not brushing all white people with a broad brush, but I'm just saying if you look at the way that they vote, right? Once you start talking about, and Democrats need to get on this, once you start talking about policy that helps everybody, you're about to lose a bunch of white folks. You see? And so what I'm saying is that they understood that Kamala Harris was talking about benefiting black people directly without saying the word black. And so that's just one of the things that I wanted to bring up. And the other thing was kitchen table issues. As you were talking, Rodney, and we're talking about black business and how black business affect, the national economy. Here's something I've also learned. And I'm talking to the Democratic Party again right now. People do not give a crap about kitchen table issues. I'm sick of that. I'm sick of hearing it. I'm tired of it. It's just not the truth. It briefs well, it sounds well, but it's just not the truth. When you combine Hillary Clinton and you combine Kamala Harris and even Joe Biden, and not even speak on local elected statewide officials, people that run for statewide, Democrats are constantly, especially those three, we're going to stick to those three, Hillary, Kamala, and Joe. That's all they talked about. And guess what? Don't nobody care until it hits them directly in their pocket. We all know that they're going to care. They are going to care a lot after these midterm elections. Obviously, then kitchen table issues will be the issue. But it's just not now, and it's just to me and so to me, Rodney, when you talked about the economy, about how the black economy is part of the national economy, that's what I thought about too. And lastly, Bobby, the same with you, man. When Rodney was talking about what's happening here in Atlanta, Maynard Jackson, brother, that's how you do it. That's why Atlanta is the Mecca, and we just got to get back to some of this stuff. So, and good topic, Rodney.
To piggyback on one quick point,
yes, sir.
When you talk about how important the black dollar is to the overall economy, ask Target. Ask Target.
All right. Ask Target. And so anyway.
Say?
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to jump into mine, which is basically, I got my bullet points here. I want to talk about the Texas Legislature and the what's happening in D.C. kind of at the same time, because there's so many similarities. There's so much going on that is by design.
Yes, sir.
According to what we talked about on this platform with Project 2025 and Agenda 47.
Yes,
I know people have forgotten those terms, but it is in full effect. First of all, I just want to remind people of why the legislation, the Texas Legislature came back into session.
Right.
Okay? They came back into session, and I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it unapologetically. They came back into session, primarily. They came back into session because of those white children drowning. So that's what it was supposed to be about. And to create some legislation to prevent this from happening again. We've said on this platform to the white people out there, if you think that they care about you, that proved it. Columbine should have proved it, proven it, but that proved it.
Sandy Hook too.
Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook. Maybe that's one I meant to actually say, because Sandy Hook was the kindergartners, right?
Elementary school kids.
Yeah, like the babies, man, like the kindergartners. Yeah. And so they don't care about you. They came back into session. That was supposed to be at the top of the agenda. And these people was trying to figure out how they can cut the majority, which is black and brown people. They were trying to figure out how to gain more power, how to rule, how to have a white minority regime, just like apartheid in South Africa. Okay? And pick their voters instead of their voters picking them. And they did that at the behest of those children that drowned. So if you keep thinking they care, then just keep thinking it. But I wanted to start it out with that as far as the Texas Legislature.
Okay. Gotcha.
But there's three main points, guys, that I want to talk about. What both of those, what's happening in the Texas Legislature and what's happening in Washington, D.C., there are three things that are trying to get accomplished, in my opinion. And that is, number one, to criminalize black citizens and black politicians in both places. in both
Yes.
places. Now, keep in mind, when I name these three things, think about D.C. and think about Texas as a state.
Yes, sir.
To criminalize black citizens and black political leaders.
Mm.
The second thing is it is a full dress rehearsal, in my opinion, for declaring martial law. It's a test run. And the third thing is, I think that it is a national vendetta against black women specifically, black people generally. Now, what I'm going to do before I ask you guys' opinion is I want to talk about a couple of things under each one of those. When we're talking about the criminalization of black people, the National Guard, okay, you have the military taking over law enforcement. And when that happened, there's a suspension of the legal process and civilian authority. Then we start talking what? Military tribunals.
Mm.
This is the process that's happening. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at both places, Texas and DC, simultaneously, the National Guard, citizen soldiers, they are guardsmen.
That's right.
Right.
They are guardsmen. And I just want to say one thing. It would be irresponsible of me. 21 years in the United States Army active duty. It would be irresponsible not to say this. Many of those National Guardsmen have no clue what's going on. Many of them don't even agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would tell you, there is a large segment that does. They know what's going on and they believe in it. Now, you can send all kind of text messages and all kind of comments that you want. The first thing I'm going to ask you is, you can't scare me with being unpatriotic. You can't scare me with anything, because I'm going to ask you how many years that you did in the uniform of the United States Army and how many years you did in combat. So forget your comments. I don't care about them. What I'm telling you is that National Guardsmen, many of them are happy. They are more than happy to get called up on active duty, because for many of them, their pay about to probably triple. Okay? They would want to be on active duty in any kind of circumstance and will do whatever it takes to stay on active duty. And it goes towards their retirement time and all this other kind of stuff. Right? So there's nothing to lose of them being called up. That needs to be talked about. And I wish that more people who have served in the uniform will call it what it is. And many of these, if you look at the states where he's calling these National Guardsmen from, he's not calling the New York National Guard. Mm-mm. These are citizen soldiers, the active duty military, the regular military. You come from all over the place. You can't be in your unit talking about, well, you're going to do this tonight to such and such and such, or you're going to go down that street and do this, when you don't know that the person that's beside you don't even believe in what you believe in, because they're from different communities, right?
Right.
So I'm not taking anything away from the National Guard, but I'm just saying what it is. I'm going to leave the National Guard along with that, but I just want for the citizens to know, okay, that do not walk up on these people and think that they are what you may think they are, or they are what you believe that the regular military is about. And I'm not saying they're not military, but they are guardsmen. They are guardsmen. Yes, when they are federalized, yes, they are soldiers. These people, a lot of these people are being illegally activated.
Yes.
Correct.
So we don't. That could take up a whole nother show.
That's
so
right.
I'm gonna go from that. And my third one, guys, under when I talked about a national vendetta against black women, okay, specifically black people in general, is that demonizing. The goal is to demonize black women, demonize the glue that holds our community together, the matriarchs. Right? Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead on and demonize them. One of the things, there's a part of me that wish that when they had Representative Nicole Collier in Texas, when they had her locked down, there's a part of me that wish that black men would come with tiki torches, if you will, to get this sister out of that doggone state house. Mm-hmm. But then there's a part of me that know that that's what they want to happen.
Yes.
That's what they're testing. Right. That's why they pick on our women. Okay, right. We got to look back in the Jim Crow. You know, they picked on the men. They picked on us. They picked on our forefathers. They was like, okay, whatever. You can't do nothing to me, right? They picked on our women. And our women looked at them and they said, you know what? Whatever you hope and try to do against me, you got to answer to God for it. But then they picked on our children, those 4 little girls. Okay?
Yeah.
And we went ballistic. So let me tell you, they know what they're doing. They know the history. They know what gets to us. But right now, they're zooming in on our women. They're trying to see how the men will react. Now, And over the past 20 years, this is definitely over the past 20 years, guys, I think it's been a setup. I think that they have purposely, when I say they, I'm talking about as far as the rich white men at the top of everything in America. They've placed black women in places, in high places, okay? And now they're starting to destroy them. Okay, like you said, 300,000, now probably 400,000 black women since that whole Doge thing has become unemployed and finding it hard to get work. And they know by doing that, what their intent was, I believe, was to create a hostility between black men and black women. I think it actually worked. I think that you guys will probably agree to some level that the tension between black men and black women right now is probably at its most tense level ever. And our state even proves that, and to a certain extent, because Stacey Abrams ran a great campaign twice. She didn't get elected in a statewide election. Brian Kemp beat her. She did not get elected, but yet that black man did, and that black Jewish man did.
White Jewish man.
I'm sorry, white Jewish man did. Okay, yeah, that would be that would prove something, Rodney. But yeah, so it kind of shows that this thing has been working. And look, every other demographic dropped off the same way as black men from Stacey Abrams. They voted for the two men, or the three men, if you count the governor. So every demographic dropped off. But why did black men? We come from those women. So I just want to put that out there. And then the other thing, guys, is when you look at Jasmine Crockett, look at who the administration is focusing on. When you look at Jasmine Crockett, when you look at now Rep Collier, State Rep Collier out there in Texas, and when you look at the D.C. mayor, okay, Muriel Bowser, look at what they're doing. They are minimizing black women. They're going after black women. And I think a lot of this has to do with a personal vendetta that Donald Trump has, but also I think a national vendetta, or just tired of hearing all of these great numbers and statistics about what's happening with black women, most educated and all this kind of stuff. I think it's a national thing. I just don't think it's a personal thing. And those women, it's black women that almost single-handedly, if this guy wouldn't have got elected, took down Donald Trump. And we have to remember Letitia James in New York.
My friend Tish.
And we have to remember Fonnie Willis right here in Atlanta.
Yes.
Gentlemen, I know there was a lot, but please opine.
Go ahead, Rodney.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, I was going to say, I was just going to touch on that. You stole my thunder with Letitia James and Fonnie Willis. And there's definitely agenda. There's definitely an agenda against black women. And guess what? I have to circle back to the election. That was revealed by us downgrading and denigrating Sister Kamala about foolishness that we talked about earlier. That was an opening right there where I'm sure that those on the other side were saying, look at this. Remember when he went to the National Black Journalists convention?
NBJA, yep.
Yes. When he went there and he was being extremely disrespectful to the host Extremely. And I don't think enough black men in general spoke out about that.
Yep.
And this was just showing what he can get away with. Because as you said, he's testing the limits of what he can get away with. And to opine on what you said earlier, the National Guard is not a police law enforcement organization. That's not what they're trained to do. And he can do it by testing DC because DC is not a state.
Correct.
So he can put DC under a quote unquote police state because they're not a state. So he can test and see how long he can get away with it there and what he may do otherwise. That's why he's targeting and talking trash to Illinois and talking about Chicago. But he's not talking about, as you mentioned before, you're not sending in the Tennessee National Guard because Memphis has a higher crime rate. I don't see you doing it in Ohio where you have all those problems with Cleveland.
Or Anchorage, Alaska.
Yes, Anchorage, Alaska, which we never talk about. There's plenty of other red states who have crime issues in their respective states where I don't see him nationalizing the National Guard. to go there and monitor around. And then he's talking this nonsense about dropping the crime rate basically in a week, in Chicago. And as we know, Chicago gets painted in the wrong light because of some things that go on one particular side of the city, right? Which is torn with poverty and unemployment and crime, right? So they exploit that and they make it seem like that's all of Chicago when it isn't. You hear about Chicago being basically a war zone, the way the media likes to portray it. Chicago's a beautiful city. It is an absolutely beautiful city to visit and to see. It's no different, I don't think, it's no different than any parts of the country where you have a major city that has crime, right? Crime is a condition of a particular area high in unemployment, high in poverty. Those are the main things that basically push crime to the forefront in those type of areas, right? Where people have to make a decision or they're frustrated by their attempts at unemployment, their attempts to quote unquote live the American dream, and it just hasn't happened for them. But these same things happen in these rural areas that they don't talk about, right? They don't want to talk about it in the rural quote unquote white areas where white on white crime is higher than anything else.
Yep.
But they don't want to bring up those numbers. So I just say all that again to back up what you were saying. I know you gave a lot, so I just want to touch on a couple things.
Wow. Well,
Mr. Littles.
yes, this week on the news, the governor of Illinois held a
Pritzker.
press conference, and he outlined all the states that are sending guardsmen to D.C. have higher crime rates, sometimes double the murder rate of D.C. Same thing with Chicago. These states have higher rates of crime than Chicago and Illinois. But it's a game, as you said, to see what I can get away with. Basically, the man said he was considering what it would like to be a dictator. But you don't have to tell me that, bro. I see it.
Yeah.
The actions that you talked about, Brother Butler explains the roadmap to a point of no return. So we need to take a real step back, a deep breath, and take a look at where we are. This isn't about so-called race. I mean, first of all, I'm a freedman, number one. Okay?
Heard that.
I bleed red the same way anybody else does, no matter what hue they may be or what the melanin may be. So we're part of the human race. Let's get that straight.
Yep.
And we have been a major contributor, not only to the founding of this country, but since it's been here. We've served in every war, came home and were treated like slaves, former slaves, treated like not citizens.
Not
But yet
humans.
we stay loyal. We stay loyal. So now, Brother Butler, as you said earlier, what's happening is this whole SNAP food stamp problem in Georgia with the cards. They got white folks, women on the news, complaining about how this is affecting her family. Blonde hair, blue-eyed, and lack of melanin, crying on the news about how she's being treated. That she can't get to feed her kids because the program's all screwed up. Well, we wouldn't have all this crime in our cities if we had been treated fairly going back a couple of centuries now, over the last couple of centuries. Federal policy has developed the problem we have today in our community. This wasn't by accident, it's by design, it's the system. This country was designed, built for oligarchs. Okay? That's how it was designed. It was built. It wasn't built for us and you and our non-melanin friends and citizens to benefit.
Nope.
So there's going to be a find out phase, as Brother Butler would say. You voted for this. Now you're going to find out. This is what we're up against. And we're all in this together. We're all in this together.
Rodney, that's part of the problem, that the word all. I think if we were a more homogenized country, like some of the countries in Europe, then those words, that sentence would make more sense. But there are people out there, they do not want for people that don't look like them, people who they don't see as a family member, to benefit from good policy. They rather go without, they rather die themselves than for others to benefit, because they have been hoodwinked by their own people, like you said, by the oligarchs. And Bobby, I think on your show, it might be time to do a civics lesson in what capitalism really is. And the way capitalism, the only way that capitalism can work is and thrive is that you have a large swath of the population being very, very cheap to free labor. It is just the way it is. But that is a whole nother show. And guys, I apologize. I know that each point that I brought up can be a show in itself. And I hate, to the audience, I hate that I squeeze basically three shows in a 20-minute set portion of this show. But it's just got to be said. And I know there's a lot to be unsaid. But look, we are here to get you to thinking. We cannot teach you stuff from elementary school, or not even from school, from when we had Saturday school back in the day. When you had Monday through Friday school, and whatever crap they teaching you in school about history, okay, learn that, chew the meat, spit out the bones. We had Saturday school where you're going to learn about us, black folks. And then you had Sunday school where you learn about religion and spirituality and those kind of things, right? But Saturday school been gone in our community, been gone a very long time. I wish it would come back. So look at this as Saturday school for the people who follow this podcast. We cannot teach you everything. We try to keep each episode to, about 60 minutes, plus or minus. And like I said, I do apologize for putting topics that could be 3 different shows into a little bit of time. But now go research. Now go challenge us, because like Rodney said, Rodney is the one Rodney is going to give you his sources. Bobby a lot of times is going to give you he's going to talk about statistical stuff and that kind of thing. I a lot of times just start running my mouth. But at the end of the day, look, if those people can get on TV and just spew anything they want to spew, and you walk away and believe it, just like you want to walk away and say, yeah, man, I guess they got that crime. They said there's been no homicide in since the National Guard been there. You don't even know. You just take their word for it, right? Well, what I'm telling you, take our freaking word for it.
Amen.
Take our word for it, or at least go and challenge us. Go and do the research after you watch these episodes, because if we spend all day long, we don't claim to be a news agency or a source. We are an opinion. We are three opinionated black men who speak the unapologetic truth at every moment we get. But anyway, gentlemen, I just wanted to just say that. And Rodney, let you close out with what you need to close out with. Bobby, we'll go to you, and then we'll get this thing closed out.
Yes.
Cool.
Well, I like to speak to my Republican freedmen, my MAGA dark-skinned brethren and sisters. I'm asking you to fix this mess that your leaders have gotten us into as it relates to my people. That's what I'm asking. Because the bottom line is, America will not survive if they feel they can destroy those of us whose roots were here before they came.
That's right.
Okay? So think of this very carefully. If we're going to survive as a country and prosper, the last thing you want to do is try to keep us down and destroy any possibility of us just surviving in this nation as citizens. You're cutting your nose off to spite your own face. I plead with you. my friends across the aisle that look like me. Now it's time for you to go in those back rooms and straighten this out now. Not tomorrow, now. These are your people? You push them. Blacks for Trump? Come on now. I'm calling on you. It's time to be accountable now for your decision to put us in this predicament.
Thank you, sir. Bobby?
I'm going to piggyback a little bit off what Rodney said and just go into the whole idea again of loving yourself. I'm going to read just a small portion of Malcolm X's speech. Who taught you to hate yourself? This is from May 5th, 1962. This one little part right here. The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. Now ask yourself over this past election, and it goes back to what I said before about the disrespect I thought that was given to Sister Kamala Harris. And worrying about things about who she slept with, who she's currently sleeping with, who she's married to, all of these things that did not matter, but ignoring what her policy would have done. It's a lack of love for self. You don't hear Caucasians saying who's really Caucasian and who's not. That's a conversation that we generally use against ourselves. Ask yourself why. Why? I was raised and just taught and to understand that black is black. I don't care if it's the lightest to the darkest. Love it. Love all of it. We can't unify when we're basically constantly mitigating ourselves into these small conversations that produce nothing. So when we come together and figure out how much unity we can have if we just put aside the foolishness, this all goes back to obviously slavery. But if we put aside the foolishness and just focus, and by the way, the Republican Party of Frederick Douglass, that's not the Republican Party of today.
No, sir. No,
that's why we keep saying, like, get off of the D and R stuff.
Yep.
Pay
Yes,
attention. Okay? The
That's
Democratic Party of today is not the same Democratic Party prior to the Civil Rights Act.
Correct.
Okay? I'm not telling you that either one has everything for as far as a black agenda is concerned. I already know that, right? But for those of you who voted for Kanye West, for those of you that waste your time voting for Jill Stein and all these, just ask yourself, was it worth it? What did you prove? And there are those that we know that didn't vote at all.
Amen.
That is all contributed to the mess that we're in right now. Until we learn to love ourselves, stop hating ourselves. Stop with it. Just all it does is just create disunity amongst us, which is exactly what they want.
Amen.
So have you noticed, has anybody noticed, has the crime dropped since all these deportations have begun? Did crime stop overnight with all these deportations? Because
No, sir.
they're going to start as they've done with brown people, and they're going to keep on going until they get to what they want. So that I will close on for my statement, my agenda, but stay alert, read by all means, as Rodney said before, do your own research, read for yourself and learn something more about yourself so that you can be better educated going forward.
Bobby X.
Bobby,
you,
if
sir.
anything, like you said, did the crime decrease with all these deportations? Nope. If anything, crime is going to increase because guess what? People are going to start to get hungry because those people are being deported. And when you get hungry, you start committing crimes if you can't, if
right.
nobody gives you something to eat.
That's right.
And one last thing I want to say, guys, before I close it out, and that is they're watching us. They're looking at all this ADOS stuff and all this foundational black stuff. And again, I don't have anything personal against any of that, but they are watching. They are like, look at them. They're already dividing before they even can get any kind of thought of
right.
reparation.
That's
They're already
right.
dividing themselves.
That's right.
That's what they do. That's what the
right.
whole Willie Lynch theory was, is to
Yes,
divide
sir.
them by the way they look, the
sir.
the skin tone and the hair texture and all this other stuff.
Yes, sir.
And it is
Paper bag
still
test.
it is the paper bag test. It is still working. We are already doing it to our other, black people, and they are watching. And one other thing, Bobby, that you talked about was that the fact that you don't see Caucasians excluding Caucasians and saying, well, he's not white, he's not white. Even when they did it with the Irish and the Italians and everybody else.
and
Guess
the
what
Jews.
though? When they saw that it would benefit them,
Right.
they said, oh no, you're white.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
And we're doing the opposite, bro.
Yep.
Yes,
Anyway, gentlemen, I appreciate everything, man. Y'all know we can go all night.
I know,
But
man.
at any rate, man, hey, we got to leave the people wanting something, right?
Yes,
So,
sir.
gentlemen, I appreciate it. I appreciate your actual topics. They were on point. All this stuff come together. People may think we rehearsed, and no, we wait until the last minute to say, what is your topic going to be?
Right.
Because things change so much that
Oh,
we
man.
wait all the way to the day before we do this show to say, okay, what is it? What is your topic? And then we don't even know then that they're going to feed off of each other until we start doing the show. So anyway, gentlemen, I appreciate your expertise. That's why you're here. I appreciate your just unapologetic blackness. And with that, I am going to close this thing out, and I will close it out by saying, catch the Black Man's Roundtable podcast the third Thursday of the month. Also catch the BMR's Roundup with Rodney and Rodney the second Thursday of the month, and the BMR's Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby the first Thursday of the month. All episodes drop at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace.
Peace.
Hey, family. If you like what you saw, visit our website at blackmansroundtable.com for more information or to check out more content. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace.